everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm 12 News reporter Bianca Buono, alongside partner at Quarles and Brady, Hector Diaz. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
We're here to talk about Paul Petersen. So he was in court earlier this morning. I was in the courtroom, and today he was being arraigned on 32 charges here in Arizona. So these are state charges. I know last week we were on Facebook Live. You were here. I was out in Arkansas, where he was facing 19 federal charges. So it's a little bit different here when we're talking federal versus state. And the nature of the charges are certainly different here in Arizona. He's facing 28 counts of fraud, 1 count of conspiracy, 1 count of theft, and 1 count of forgery, and he pled not guilty to all of those charges today, which probably didn't come as a surprise to you. Certainly didn't to me.
No, today is really the kickoff of the criminal case. You know, defense attorneys we often have a term for today's hearing. It's the arraignment, but we call it the not guilty arraignment, because really every defendant that comes in, he's read the indictment, he's told, you know, here are the charges, the felony accounts, and then you enter a plea of not guilty. It's, you know, the release conditions were already set at his initial appearance, so that's already something that's done and in place. So really, it's a perfunctory hearing. Nothing really goes on in terms of it. Sometimes the defendant will get discovery. They'll often get, you know, a nice little CD of the discovery, but now that's even rare that you're getting discovery that soon, especially on a case like this.
Yeah, and actually I was chatting with Paul Petersen's attorney, Kurt Altman, before the hearing, and we were talking about discovery or the evidence in these cases, because we in the media have not seen it yet, and in fact, his legal team hasn't seen it yet. And I was told that in this case, especially out of Arkansas, the evidence that they have is so large that it's not able to be sent via email or through Dropbox or something like that. So they're actually waiting on boxes to arrive in the mail. So they're still waiting to see what the government has against them and what the state of Arizona has against them.
This is, I mean, there's no question that this case just in Arizona is what we call a complex case. And so, you know, once you designate, and it's actually a term of art, when you designate a criminal case complex, that changes the rules a little bit. So the defense now has a little bit longer in terms of being able to review the discovery. Ultimately, if they're going to go to trial, it kind of extends the period. This is the kind of case that I wholeheartely expect that the defense team now going back is going to discuss. Do we designate this as a complex case? That may have been even something that they did today at today's hearing. It just buys the defense a little more time. In a case like this, that may ultimately be what you want to do, given that you've got the other 2 cases out there, especially the federal case.
And speaking of timing, actually the timeline is set as of now to move fairly quickly. His court date in Arkansas for the federal case is set for December 9th. Do you imagine his legal team will plan on trying to push that back? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard that trial was set for December, I really felt that it was more of a placeholder. Now, there could be some strategy here, though. It could be that the defense team believes that the government, the U.S. government in the federal case, won't be ready, that they're not ready, that they're still conducting investigations, that they're still... So what they may try to do is actually force the trial, hoping to catch the government on its heels. I mean, that's a dangerous strategy, though, because it's been my experience that when the government indicts you, they're going to be ready. And so... But, you know, I think that was set as a placeholder. They're probably going to push that in Arkansas. It wouldn't shock me if they push it for 6 months.
And typically when we have, you know, federal and state cases, and there's another state case playing out in Utah as well, but when you have federal and state cases happening at the same time, do you typically see that you try to get the federal case dealt with first, or how does that work?
Well, the federal case is going to take priority for sure. I mean, there's no question that that's where the defense's focus will be, is in Arkansas. Not to say that Arizona and Utah are going to be at all taking a back seat, because they're not. I mean, they're going to be incredible, important cases and also distractions here. But that's going to be ultimately the driver of these 2 cases. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if the defense team asks Arizona and Utah to not put it on hold, but to bear into consideration when setting court dates that, hey, we've got this federal case that's going on. And so, but that's going to be the driver in Arkansas.
And by the way, if you're joining us, just joining us on Facebook, thank you so much. We're here talking about Paul Petersen. He was in court here in Arizona earlier this morning. I'm joined alongside Hector Diaz. He's a defense attorney here in the Valley. So if you have any questions about this case, it's so complex. I know I certainly have had several along the way. Feel free to comment them below. We have members of our digital team here looking over the questions, so we're happy to answer any of them. I do want to talk a little bit about what happened outside of court. So Paul Petersen, of course, as many of you may know, he posted his bond here in Arizona for $500,000 cash. He then posted his bond in Utah for another $150,000 cash, and then he was ultimately released in Arkansas. So we caught him as he was flying back to Arizona, and since then, for the past week, he has been at home here in the Valley. So when he showed up to court today, he was sitting in, in the audience rather than being brought in handcuffs like he was last week. So after court, he did come out and speak with us alongside his attorneys. He didn't say much, but his attorneys now seem to really be focusing on getting him his job back as Maricopa County Assessor, which for many can be hard to believe because he has so much on his plate right now. But I want to give you a quick listen to what his attorneys had to say to the media outside of his arraignment this morning.
A not guilty plea is entered on your behalf on the charges. These are your next court dates.
So my client, Mr. Petersen, not going to make any statements to the media, so I know you guys are going to want to ask him questions. I'd appreciate it if you didn't. So what do you need?
What's next for you guys? What's the plan? I know you guys have a federal hearing coming up. I know you guys are still waiting on discovery as well. Tell us what your plan is for his defense.
Well, I'm not going to go into our plan for the defense, but obviously we have to wait for discovery. Right now we're scheduled for a court date in Arkansas on December 5th, I think is the pretrial conference, and we have the next court date here in Arizona, December 19th. Sure, there's going to be some changes in scheduling and things like that, and we're really at the beginning stages.
What are next steps with the Board of Supervisors?
The Board of Supervisors, obviously our position is they've acted outside their authority. We have a couple days to challenge that. I have some colleagues here, Corey Langhofer and Tom Basile, who are going to handle that on behalf of Mr. Petersen. We're not going to let it go.
Is there a lawsuit in the foreseeable future?
I'm going to let you talk to them about that.
Corey, can you step up there and tell us what you guys plan on doing here? You guys going to file anything today, tomorrow?
Sure thing. So there are two things you need to know. The first thing is that no one is saying Paul Petersen didn't do his job as county assessor very well. Everyone agrees he did the job, he showed up, he got done what needed to be done. That's not the issue at all. The second thing is that the County Board of Supervisors can't just remove the assessor. We got together as a state and we agreed in the Constitution on how you can remove a constitutional officer. Paul Petersen's a constitutional officer. They can't just have a meeting one day and throw him out. Constitutionally, Paul Petersen and the board are equals. And Paul, for example, couldn't just say, hey, Board of Supervisors, you're all out of a job. That wouldn't work. And they can't do it to him. So yeah, there certainly is a lawsuit in the making here. We'll first write a letter, try to resolve this amicably. If we can't resolve it, we'll go into court.
Have they tried to explain how the hearing would work? I mean, according to the statute, it's not very clear on who that hearing would be presented to and who would make the final decision. What do you know about that process?
Well, it's pretty clear. A hearing before the board is going to be a farce. They've decided to throw him out regardless of what the Constitution says, and so I suspect this is going to end up in court.
Do you believe Mr. Petersen's able to continue his job as assessor while managing all of these several court cases coming up?
Yes, he is. Again, there's no question that he's done his job very well. No one's saying he didn't. No one's accusing him of misconduct in office. All of the county's money has been used properly. That's not the issue at all. What's really happened here is he was accused of something, certainly not been proven yet, but he was accused. They said that's enough to remove him from office. That's just constitutionally completely inadequate.
Why would
I think you guys have. Well, he obviously has a lot of decisions to make on that front. He's got a lot of decisions to make on many fronts right now. But so far he hasn't resigned, so they can't talk.
Can we get your first and last name?
Sure. Corey, K-O-R-Y. The last name is Langhofer, L-A-N-G-H-O-F-E-R.
Any background with that? Do you specialize in
Constitutional. Great. Thanks, guys.
All right, so there you heard it. That was the media gaggle outside of Paul Petersen's arraignment this morning. And it looks like we do have one question on the Facebook Live, and that's why aren't there human trafficking charges here in Arizona? We know that Utah has brought those charges, and the federal government has as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Ultimately, the Attorney General's office, when they brought this indictment, they had to make the decision which charges were they comfortable, which charges did they believe that they could obtain convictions against Mr. Petersen. And so they were the ultimate deciders in terms of what to present to the grand jury. And so, I do have to your point, I have to believe that they likely talked with Utah, Arkansas, and made the decision that, hey, we're going to defer those kinds of charges to other states.
I will say I asked that question at the initial press conference with the Attorney General here, Mark Brnovich, and I said, why is there such a difference from here to Utah, for example? And he said something very similar in that, we had concrete evidence, or, he says that he does. We haven't seen it yet, but that shows that there was clear fraud here in Arizona. There was Medicaid fraud. So those charges may have been just the easier ones to bring forward. And there is always a possibility of adding additional charges down the line as this investigation continues. So I don't know if you guys could hear it, but during that media gaggle, we did ask Kurt Altman, his attorney, what are the next steps, and he declined to answer. But I'd like to ask you, with a case of this magnitude, so complex as you said, what are the next steps that his legal team's going to be taking?
Yeah, and to his defense attorney's position, I mean, that's the appropriate response. I've been in that position many times when you're on the steps, and it is. The no comment is the appropriate response. But let's pretend. So essentially now, the next steps are getting the discovery, and it's going to be significant. 32 counts. Even if there's some overlap with other states, they're going to push to get the discovery. I think the other step, if it hasn't already been done, is to designate this case complex, and that's a specific motion that's got to get filed that's going to extend the time. Under Arizona law, any defendant who gets charged with a criminal offense has so many days to go from the arraignment to trial, right? By designating it complex in certain cases, it actually extends it. And that sometimes benefits a client to have that additional time to be able to review the discovery, potentially engage in plea negotiations. And then additionally, there's going to be, this case was presented to the grand jury. And one of the things that I'm certain their defense team is going to want to do is look at the grand jury transcript. What did the Attorney General's office tell the grand jury in indicting Mr. Petersen? And, at that grand jury, his defense wasn't, they're not there, they're not able to cross-examine witnesses. It's a very secretive hearing. And so they're going to want to know what was said. And are there challenges in terms of whether or not that hearing was fair, was it impartial? And they're going to want to see if that's a possibility. And so,
going back to designating a case complex, do you know how much time that would potentially give his team? 270
days from the arraignment, I believe. Without having the benefit of my rule book, I think it's 270 days. And it puts the case in a different posture. It actually, there are certain judges that actually will handle the complex case designations. They'll have regular status conferences, so every 30 to 45 days as check-ins to see, is discovery forthcoming? Are there motions that are going to be filed challenging the evidence, the admissibility of the evidence? We know in this case that investigators obtained a lot of the discovery via search warrants, right? It's not going to be surprising if some of the evidence is electronic, so emails, text messages, phone records, all of that's typically obtained via subpoena. And so his attorneys are going to want to look at the actual search warrant affidavits, which are the documents that were submitted to the courts, saying, here's the proof that we have, here's the evidence that we have that a crime occurred, and we believe these devices, these homes, they have evidence of this criminal conduct. And so his defense team are going to want to review all of that and really dive in to see if there are any challenges, constitutional challenges that can be made to the evidence.
So it seems like certainly this case would qualify for a complex case.
100%. This fits within the purview of a complex case, 100%.
The other thing that I wanted to briefly talk about is, do you think Paul Petersen would be able to continue to do his job as Maricopa County Assessor? He has until Thursday to appeal the board's decision to suspend him, which it certainly sounds like they're going to be appealing that decision and potentially take legal action if that doesn't work out. But do you think that he could manage his job while dealing with these complex cases across 3 states?
It's one thing to have one case in one state, but to have 3 cases in 3 separate states, it's going to be difficult. His lawyers are going to make a very strong challenge here in Arizona to allow him to keep the job. Is it because he needs the money, or is it more the appearance of, hey, we kept him as the assessor, as the county assessor, and so it's to say that it's not going to be a distraction. I think that's far-fetched.
Yeah, it just seems like obviously he has a great legal team, and the legal team seems to be growing every time that we see them. But that's a lot. These cases are a lot to handle, and
100%.
And dealing with this fight with the board on top of it is just another 100%. Challenge.
Yeah, and I think the next, there's something interesting that we're not talking about here, which is the co-defendant. So he's got a co-defendant. She wasn't in court today, and so it's going to be interesting to see how she plays out in this case. And again, this is just kind of some legal speculation on my part, but is she going to cooperate here? Is she going to ultimately try to obtain a plea offer to her benefit, I think we were talking a little bit off that she's still in custody.
Yes.
And so, you know, it goes without saying you don't want to be in jail. And so there may be some benefit here to her sitting down with the Attorney General's office. Does she have information to share? And so that's going to be another issue that I'm sure the defense team could have to deal with going down the road.
Yeah, so for those who are not familiar, his co-defendant here is in Arizona is a woman named Linwood Jeanette. And we believe that she is Marshallese, and we believe that she was maybe his connection to the Marshallese community. We know he actually speaks the language as well, but it seems like she certainly was more connected in that community to potentially, you know, get some of these women to put their babies up for adoption. So it'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out. And, you know, as of now, he has court dates in December, but we do believe, as we've talked about, that those may be delayed and pushed back. I don't know if the Christmas holiday would have anything play any part when it comes to...
It does. It does. Judges are people too, and prosecutors have families, and defense attorneys have families. So really, I mean, it's not uncommon to see the court cases around Thanksgiving, December, the New Year's shut down. And so that's going to be another delay. You know, he is out of custody. Again, you know, something that's important, I think, for all the viewers to recognize. He's innocent until proven guilty.
Absolutely.
I mean, he has not been convicted of anything in Arkansas, Utah, and as you indicated, he's got a good defense team, and they're going to put together a very good plan.
And yeah, absolutely, he is innocent until proven guilty, and we have not seen any of the discovery, the evidence, and I know his legal team hasn't either. So that's another piece that they're expecting any day now. So we'll see if we get any insight into what's in that discovery from Arkansas. So in the meantime, are there any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us on Facebook Live. Hector, thank you so much for your time. Your insight is so helpful. This is a case that is, you know, very unfamiliar to many of us in the media and certainly to many of our viewers. So we'll have much more on Paul Petersen's arraignment coming up tonight on 12 News at 5. So we hope you can join us.